Hello, everybody. So excited to see you again. Kyle Allen with Vaco. And I have a special guest, Lucia Marley,
Whoop, whoop.
today, talking about an exciting topic. One that, I don't know, 10 years ago, I'm like, handling multiple job offers was something that was like, it happens every once in a while. Now it's like every week we're handling it, um,
Yep.
walking through people with it. So excited for the conversation today. Lucia, tell us a little about you, how you got
Yeah.
here, all that.
Yes. Well, so I'm Lucia Marley. I spent the first teeny tiny little bit of my career in public accounting and then came over to Vaco in 2017, and I've been here ever since. So I do both recruiting and I help clients as well. But lately it's been mostly recruiting. So I'm glad we're talking about that today.
It's dominating it. The job market is crazy. We see it
It
shifting
is.
all the time. And so I think the best way to kind of jump into this, and if you have questions, put them in the chat. We'll get to those as well with this
Hmm.
or any kind of comments, insight. Love to hear from you. Um, Tell us kind of understanding the process. So somebody's starting the job. I think it's really important to kind of walk through that. How do you help individuals looking for jobs, and how do you start understanding kind of what they're motivated and what are their drivers? Kind of what's the process they start with, Luge?
Yeah. So as far as, just getting started, um, I mean, typically, it's kind of a transactional thing right at the get. It's just like, hey, what are you looking for? What are you doing? But then we like to kind of dive a little deeper and talk about, we call them the drivers, but basically, what's your motivation for looking for something new? Typically, yes, everyone wants a little bit more money most of the time, but there's a lot of other factors too, especially right now with the split between, a hybrid schedule, going into the office, work from home, a work-life balance, all of that. So getting down to kind of that level and really letting people, okay, think like, other than money, what am I really looking for in my next job? Um, that can really help us as we're going through the process to stay kind of focused on what you're really looking for rather than kind of having a billion things thrown at you. And then making sure at the end of the day you take a job that you're really, really excited about and is exactly what you want. So that's a super, super important part of
We
kind of
should
the
talk
interview process.
for sure. And I think this is really important to state in the beginning. Why is it so important to understand your drivers and motivators in the beginning of the process and to understand
Yeah.
those now? And then you get multiple job offers. It gets real emotional. You can't really think clearly. Talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So going through those kind of drivers and motivators at the beginning is just, that at that point you have kind of a clear mind to really think, okay, you don't have any opportunities. You're just talking purely from a theoretical standpoint. Well, nowadays, especially if you're kind of at that, for us on the accounting side, at that kind of staff senior, that 0 to 5 to 7 year mark. Once we go through that and get that kind of initial interview, I mean, you're probably going to have 4 or 5 things that I'm sending over to you that day. I might be sending 3 or 4 more the next day. I mean, it really moves that quick. And so then you start to get kind of other things on the line as far as your process. You meet the people there and think about a different industry, a different company or whatever. And then it gets hard to kind of go through, okay, wait, I liked this hiring manager, but I like this location, but I like this schedule. And it just is really hard to kind of stay on track with what you were originally looking for. So that's kind of where we come in and say, hey, I know you really, really like this person over here, but you said when we first met, your number one thing you wanted to have either a really short commute or work from home because you've got 2 little kids at home and you don't have time to be driving back and forth. And it's like, okay, yeah, that you're right. That's what we talked about. And I've got this offer at this place that's 2 minutes away from my house. And then I've got this other one that's 45 minutes away. It's a strong offer, but let's bring it back to what we were really looking for, at the very beginning.
Awesome. No, totally. Just
Yeah,
make sure that's full. So that helps so much with that and
it
going
really does.
back to it for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So we've met with you. You're looking for a role. We've
Hmm.
got a few opportunities we're looking at as an individual. Lucia, how do you prepare them for that interview? Kind of what do you walk me through that as far as getting ready to get the job interview to go into handle multiple job offers.
Yes. So say you've got a couple interviews coming up. So it would be our job to, kind of walk you through getting those set up, doing all that. But then we're there to say, okay, most of the time we hop on the phone for, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. It's not super long, but going through, questions that they might ask. If we know a specific question that they're going to ask or something that they want you to bring to the table, preparing you for that. Talking about, okay, we've placed this person there, this person there. This is what their feedback was. This is what they like about it. This is what they've said, maybe wasn't their favorite. And then just our experience with the company. I mean, I have one right now that I'm working on. I've been working with this company since I started at Vaco, so for 5 years. And I can say, well, I placed this person there. They're still there, going through all of that. And I can even say, hey, this interviewer, they're a little bit more on the, low key, kind of quieter side. And I always like to, prepare people for someone's temperament going in, because it can kind of throw you off if you're not like necessarily matching their temperament. But it could be like, hey, this is just how they are. They're just a little bit more quiet and reserved. But don't let that, make you think that they don't like you, because they definitely do. So things like that just kind of help you go through the process and get a feel for who you're going to be talking to and how they're going to react. And then, of course, anything we know about the company in general, as far as what they're looking for long term, to make sure you're thinking about the experience that they're going to want to hear, during that interview.
So, Lucia, with you and you guys, I mean, obviously, if you're outsider looking in, it's easy. You can look at the company website, but it's really hard to get a feel for the culture, for the types of people you're going to talk to, and then also understanding questions they're going to ask and what's kind of expected. I mean, I think just the overall deep prep that you guys can provide an individual about the organization they're going into is invaluable. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just having that knowledge of working with someone for 5 years, I mean, or for however long. I mean, some clients have been at Vaco for 15 years. I mean, and some of them have just been here 2 years, but just the experience that you get from having these long-term relationships, you really get a feel for what they're looking for, which that can even lead me to say, hey, look, candidate, I've sent you these 5 jobs. Based on what you said and what we originally talked about in your interview, I think you're going to like these 3 the best. Not to say there's anything wrong with these other 2 or anything like that. It's more so just, based on what you said you were looking for. Like, you wanted a culture where you go to, lunches and happy hours and you do little team outings. Well, these companies are going to have that. Whereas these are more, hey, you come in, get your work done, go home. You're always leaving by 5, but that's just that's how they are. And then that can also help kind of narrow it down too. Maybe you want to entertain all 5, maybe you want to start with these 3, but it just, that knowledge and getting, having the knowledge of the company plus having that knowledge of what you're really looking for long term, can really help us manage the process, especially when there are so many opportunities, so that you're not sitting there going, oh my gosh, like I just have interview after interview. It feels like they're not going anywhere. Like, it's good to have multiple interviews, but at the same time, it can be overwhelming for people, especially if they're working full time. So being able to really focus in on, okay, look, these guys are probably not going to be what you're looking for, but these guys over here, they check all 3 of these boxes that you mentioned. So let's maybe start here. And if we need to add on, we can. So I do that a lot with my candidates. It's just kind of like timing everything and making sure we're prioritizing jobs based on what they said from, the beginning was their motivation for looking for something new.
Awesome. So, Lucia, I've met with you. We've talked about my motivators, my drivers. Why I'm looking for a job, which typically is not money, right? And if you want to stick that out, we've got a good, we're accountants, but we just recently did one for the technology side of the house, a survey that says it's not money, right? Which is shocking. One of the main motivators in looking for a job is not. It's typically the company and your boss is one of the top ones. And then 2, I'm prepared. I've gone to my interviews. I've crushed them. Of course, I'm a great individual. Everybody wants to hire me, Lucia. And now I have 4 offers. I don't know what to do. Help me.
Yeah. Well, number 1, congrats. That's awesome that you got 4 offers.
Yeah.
That would be what I would say first, because it truly is amazing. I mean, it's something that we're seeing a lot more of now. But on the flip side, it truly is something amazing. But yes, okay, so this is where it gets hard, right? Because you've got 4 offers, they're all wanting you, and you're just kind of like, I don't know. I like them. I like them. I like
Yep.
them. Um, and the truth is, when you get down to the kind of at the place where you're getting offers, it's typically at that point not an easy decision, because you wouldn't have gone that far in the process if you weren't kind of having some sort of connection with
Yeah.
them. So this is, again, we go back to those drivers. Okay, let's look at, say we've got, I don't know, 3 offers, and then you've got one that's maybe pending. This is where both our experience with the company and just kind of having those drivers and motivators at the beginning really come into play, because it can be, okay, well, we know you've got these 3, we've got another one pending. But we can even say, we might know, okay, look, this other one, that you've been interviewing for, they've got 4 people that they really like, whereas this one down the road, you're kind of you're their top choice, whatever. So we can help manage it, with that sort of inside knowledge, but also just, hey, let's go back and talk about, what you were really excited about. And again, that can say, okay, well, let's narrow it down to these 2. And then from there, we can talk through, okay, what does the growth look like? What do you think, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years, at this company and this company? And that too really goes back to not only the motivators, but just kind of having that understanding of what our candidates are looking for long term, and having a relationship with candidates for, the long term, as far as like, yes, I know you really like these guys, and maybe it's even a little bit more pay, but based on what you said, you wanted to be a CFO in 10, 15 years, this one's going to have a lot more growth, and is going to put you onto that path of where you want to be long term, better than just taking the one for more money. So that's really, a big motive, or a big, issue right now, is just kind of making sure, because it is a lot about, the offers, especially when there's multiples, it can come down to, okay, well, this one's offering more. And then it kind of gets into like a bidding war type of thing. And it's like, yeah, but like you said, most people aren't just looking for more money. There's so many other factors. And so that's where, it comes in, where we can kind of sit down and talk through all of those. And on top of that, like I said, you got 3, you've got 1 pending. Well, making sure that we're managing the timeline on the client side, to say, hey, look, this guy's got 3 other offers on the table. If you want to make him an offer, you got to do it today. And I mean, this is something that we're doing all the time right now. But yeah, just making sure that we're keeping kind of everything on track to benefit our candidate, based on what they're looking for the most, and get, everything kind of on the same wavelength time-wise.
For sure. Talk a little bit in making the decision. What are some external factors that folks are looking at with the offer? I mean, obviously you have the salary and you have the benefits, and it's not always apples to apples, but it's somewhere close typically. Sometimes the benefits are sneaky though.
Mm-hmm.
There's some that have a lot higher monthly premiums than others, right? So there's some things
Mm-hmm.
you kind of dive into on the benefits, but talk about just kind of culture, environment, mission, values, just overall company presence.
Right.
Is that drawing to some individuals, or is it kind of depending on kind of what they're looking for?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, too, and it kind of goes both ways. I mean, you think people are like, oh, I really want something with this amazing culture and all of that. And of course, everyone wants somewhere with a great culture. But that means so many different things to so many different people. It could be, hey, we've got a culture where we, get you tickets to certain events, and you can go to this musical thing, or you can, go to happy hour with everybody. Or we do team outings or whatever. That could be a culture that someone's looking for. Whereas another version of a culture that someone's looking for could be, hey, we prioritize spending time with your family, meaning, yeah, we come in here, we get our work done. We maybe don't have all the bells and whistles, that some of the other companies have
More,
nowadays,
more
but,
flexible. Yeah.
yeah.
To
Um,
get benefits. Yeah.
Right. And then too, benefits, yeah, it can be deceiving. or not deceiving. That's the wrong word, but it can be
No, I
tricky.
get what you're saying is, though, I mean, sometimes listen, I look at that for sometimes those benefits, those benefit plans they send you, you're like, "What is this?" You're trying to
Yeah.
through it, like, it gets a little confusing. I mean, I think decoding that sometimes is a
Mhm.
second job we do, on what it is with you got the monthly premiums and you got the deductibles, and they're not all created equal, right? And then understanding what's
Mhm.
best fit and when it comes on board. So I think we need another consultant just for that, just for explaining the different
Yeah, I
companies
know, it's so
that are out
complicated.
there.
Yeah.
They're never the same, of course.
Yeah.
Um, but I think what do you see? You know, is I really hit on this a lot with companies play a big part in attracting talent, right? The right
Mhm.
people. And I think
Mhm.
before the day old age was okay. Well, why do you want to work here? Right? It was the clients and the corporations that had like they were sitting on their throne of like, well, they should want to work here, and I don't need really need to talk to them much. And I mean, the really good companies are pivoting from that, where it's like I'm not saying they're begging people to come work there by any means, but they're putting their best foot forward of like, hey, we're interviewing. It's a conversation. It's a two-way
Mhm.
conversation
Mhm.
where, hey, here's what we have to offer. Here's where we're going. They're creating a vision. They're creating just an atmosphere, a culture for people to buy into.
Mhm.
And they're like, man, I just want to hear from you what companies are doing that because if I'm that individual, like I'm letting some other things slide to be like, wow, this seems special, right? And there's not
Yeah.
a lot of those out there. And so talk about that a little bit as well.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, that's been huge, um, especially because we've seen, some companies that maybe do have kind of more of that, tell me why you want to work here mentality, who have been able to retain talent in the past. Now we're just like losing people left and right.
Yeah.
Because yeah, people want to know, hey, where can I go from here? What does my growth path look like? And some of these companies now, a lot of them are kind of more of these, startup, or or just kind of getting in that I don't know, or in that kind of new age of companies, I
Yeah.
guess you could say. But even the ones, anybody who is kind of has learned, okay, hey, the candidate market is tight. The days of them saying, proving to me why they want to work here, I mean, it's not really happening anymore. It's more so, hey, let me show you what we're looking at, we're looking for you to do, where we would see you in 5 years, what we can provide you, and here's what your work life balance would look like, and really everything. I mean, we have candidates who want to know kind of all those details before even throwing their name in the hat, much
Yeah.
less once you get in an interview, wanting to you know talk about, hey, why should I work here? It's more like, okay, well, I've read all your benefits, I've done all that, like what else can you give me?
Yeah.
So we're seeing a lot of that right now for sure.
Talk about this a bit with multiple offers, right? And
Mhm.
I know you've seen this. We haven't even talked about this as much. Is like there's clients you're working with that are constantly losing out on talent. Why? Why are
Mm,
companies losing out on talent right now, Lucia?
I would say, um, goodness. I mean, I don't want to say there's so many reasons, but
Yeah. I'm just
but
saying
there
with
kind of
multiple
are.
job offers, right? If somebody has 4 or 5 offers, right? And I've seen this a little bit, they're constantly not picking these other 2, typically because they're not moving fast enough, but then they're starting to move faster, but then they still can't get them, right?
I
And it all
think.
kind of boils back to telling the story, right? And
Mhm.
having the call. It kind of goes on to
Yeah.
what we've talked about already, but it's like it's one of those things where like there's a lot of good companies winning right now because they're putting the right people in place and they're asking us really good questions like, hey, how can we attract the best talent? And they're
Mhm.
evaluating their current employee roster too.
Mhm. Mhm.
Not just looking out, looking for new talent. They're looking
Yeah.
backwards too and evaluating
Mhm.
salaries and benefits. And we do it too here of like, hey, what can we do different? I didn't know if there's some clients that you're just seeing consistently they're tripping over their feet because of a certain reason.
Yes, yeah, no, that's a really good point. Yeah, I've had some that there is nothing, nothing wrong with the client, or anything that they're necessarily doing bad. But yeah, when we come down to a multiple offer situation, they just keep coming in second or third or whatever. And typically, I think that's from, not being able to show someone their growth trajectory. And then not having a culture that seems to embrace, you know people wanting to grow and wanting to try new things. It's more like, hey, you come in here, you sit down, you do your work, that's it. Or, yeah, you're going to have to do all this stuff that like no one else really wants to do. And there's no path away from that. That's kind of the biggest thing is at the end of the day, there's going to be parts of every single person's job that they don't like. But saying, yeah, you're going to be doing XYZ, but also, we've got, we expect to see you here in 2 years. We expect to see you here in 3 years. Okay, you're interested, you're doing accounting, you're interested in moving to finance. Well, we have people that move from accounting to finance all the time. Showing people that they can get to where they want to go and somewhere that meets with their long-term goals is really what ends up attracting them to, company one, whereas company two just keeps getting their offer rejected. And it very rarely comes down to money. I mean, sometimes it does, obviously, but it's the only reason it would come down to money would be if all other things were equal, which typically that's not the case. And typically, to your point, the ones that are losing are A, not moving fast enough, B, kind of have that, or both, have that kind of old school mentality of why should you want to work here? What can you bring to the table? Not at all, explaining to the candidate what they're going to get from working there. Or just kind of having this is just kind of how it is. It's like people want to know how they can contribute long term and if this company is going to align with their goals long term. So definitely in a multiple offer situation, we do see a lot of it coming down to culture, growth, and then of course, what lines up with what the person's looking for.
So hiring manager, if you're listening, speed to market's key. Talking about your culture, the why should somebody come to work for you, right? And then showing some career growth, right? I always say this too, and I've said this before, Lucia. If you're asking for an individual to come, you're looking for 10 things, and they come with those 10 things already done. It's like you're not helping them grow any, right?
Yeah.
So giving them some path to kind of do that in some different directions is super important.
Yeah, I will say to your point, and I think this is something that we're seeing a lot of, and I know we're kind of running out of time, but no, I think you're dead on with that. I mean, so often people are like, they have to check every single box. And for the candidate, that's just not exciting. I mean, if you can do everything they're already asking for, they're not getting any sort of growth. So oftentimes in that world, I'd be like, well, do you want someone permanent or do you want a consultant? Because at the end of the day, if someone can do everything that you're asking for, that's their ceiling. They want more. So making sure that, maybe they check a lot of the boxes, but most people aren't going to check every single box because they want to learn and grow. And that's really, really important to them in their next role.
Brendan made a great comment as far as clients struggling to attract talent because they're not decisive enough. I 100% agree with that. I think a lot of people, and we could probably do a whole separate section on this as far as
for sure
interview process and from a corporation standpoint. But typically they're not decisive enough, Brendan, because they're scared to make the wrong hire, which slows down the process, right? And you're scared to make the wrong hire because that's how you're going to look inside the organization, right? And so I learned long ago from Kevin Witt, who is my boss here, is like, listen, man, be quick to hire, quick to fire. Like you're going to make some really good hires and you're going to make some bad ones. Like we're dealing with people here, right? And so I think if you get inside an organization that allows you that window to do that, you can bring on some really good talent. You're going to, hey, listen, everybody here has hired somebody they probably shouldn't have, but it's totally, totally good. Last question, Luce. So I have multiple offers. We've decided, but let's talk about this a little bit real quick. The time frame. Should we sit on offers? Should we get to them? How quickly should I let the corporation know that I want to go work for? Should I walk me through that as far as just communication?
Yeah, no, a day or two can mess someone up in this market. Everything is moving as quick as possible. So yeah, people are scared of making the wrong hire, but it's also like if you sit on them, you're going to lose a great hire just because you're scared of commitment, I guess.
Right.
That's just part of it. I mean, you kind of just have to go through and make that decision. And yeah, it's definitely, tough right now, but yeah, if you're waiting a day or two and expecting them to still be there, especially again in that like 0 to 5, 7 years on the accounting and finance side, you've already lost them.
Yeah.
They're going somewhere else who was excited to have them come on board and show them what they could do there.
Now, on the flip side, Lucia, from the candidate receiving those offers, I always think it's interesting. This is your first opportunity to make a decisive decision for your new employer, right?
Mhm.
And so I always think a prompt decision and prompt back and forth of a couple of people are like, well, I'm going to wait about a week to give them an answer. I'm like, man, this is your first showcase of like, hey, we can talk about negotiating offers, and that's a whole nother
Mhm.
deal.
Yeah.
But making a prompt decision to your employer and getting back to them in a prompt way just shows one, excitement, right? You're like, wow, she
Mhm.
really wants to be here, or he wants to be here. And
Mhm.
two, you're like, all right, she knows what she wants. She's got,
Yeah.
showing some really good decisive decision making. And I think it's your first step forward inside your new organization.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think so I kind of tell my candidates like if they're asking for a week, you're waiting on another offer, and that does not sit
Totally.
right with the
That's
hiring
right.
manager.
That's
So if
right.
you
And
don't want
everybody
this
knows that.
role, yeah, it's like there's no other reason to wait that long or even just a couple days. It's like that just doesn't sit right. So typically like a day or two on the candidate side. But if it's going more than that, either it's, if they have something come up or whatever, of course.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's like, well, yeah, and then
If it needs
no one's getting off to the right foot.
if it needs to be longer, at least be fully transparent on it, right? Don't be like, I just need a week to think about it. Like,
Yeah.
no, you do not.
Mm-mm,
You're not going to think
mm-mm.
about it for the entire week. You're delaying, and tell them that and why, and here's what's going on. So I think
Right.
being truthful to the process and transparent is key. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Lucia, this was awesome.
It
Super
was so much
helpful.
fun.
Dealing multiple job offers. It's a good problem to have in this crazy, crazy world.
It truly, truly is.
I will see everybody back in a few weeks, and look forward to talking soon. Thanks, Lucia.
Bye.